Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for October the 24th. Today, we are reading together the last chapter in First Chronicles. We're looking at chapter 29 today. Again, going to wrap up our reading here in First Chronicles, and of course, that means we're moving on to Second Chronicles tomorrow. But for today, we got to read our last bit about David from the Chronicler. We're going to read about how the various contributions were made to the temple, beginning with David, and how that generosity of David seems to have influenced other leaders within Israel. So we'll note that here in First Chronicles chapter 21. Let me get the text up on screen. Actually, text is up on the screen. So let's read along together here. First Chronicles chapter, I say 21? No, should not say 21. First Chronicles 29 and verse number 1. Here we go. First Chronicles chapter 29, verse number 1 tells us that then King David said to all the assembly, "My son Solomon, God has chosen him alone, is young and inexperienced. The task is great because the building will not be built for a human, but for Yahweh God. So to the best of my ability, I've made provision for the house of my God, gold for the gold articles, silver for the silver, bronze for the bronze, iron for the iron, and wood for the wood, as well as onyx, stones for mounting, antimony, stones of various colors, all kinds of precious stones, and a great quantity of marble. Moreover, because of my delight in the house of my God, I now give my personal treasures of gold and silver for the house of my God, over and above all that I provided for the holy house, 100 tons of gold, the gold of Ophir, and 250 tons of refined silver for overlaying the walls of the buildings, the gold for the gold work and the silver for the silver, for all the work to be done by craftsmen. Now, who will volunteer to consecrate himself to Yahweh today?" Then the leaders of the households, the leaders of the tribes of Israel, the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and the officials in charge of the king's work gave willingly. For the service of God's house, they gave 185 tons of gold and 10,000 gold coins, 375 tons of silver, 675 tons of bronze, and 4,000 tons of iron. Whoever had precious stones gave them to the treasury of Yahweh's house under the care of Jehiel, the Gershonites. Then the people rejoiced because of their leader's willingness to give, for they had given to Yahweh wholeheartedly. King David also rejoiced greatly. First Chronicles chapter 29 and verse number 10. Then David blessed Yahweh in the sight of all the assembly. David said, "You may be blessed, or may you be blessed, Yahweh God of our father Israel, from eternity to eternity. Yours, Yahweh, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the splendor and the majesty. For everything in the heavens and on earth belongs to you. Yours, Yahweh, is the kingdom, and you are exalted as head over all. Riches and honor come from you, and you are the ruler of everything. Power and might are in your hands, and it is in your hand to make great and to give strength to all. Now, therefore, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name." But who am I? And who are my people? David writes or says that praise that we should be able to give as generously as this. For everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your own hands. For we are aliens and temporary residents in your presence, as were all our ancestors. Our days on earth are like a shadow without hope. Yahweh, our God, all this wealth that we've provided for building you a house for your holy name comes from your hands. Everything belongs to you. I know, my God, that you test the heart and that you are pleased with what is right. I have willingly given all these things with an upright heart, and now I have seen your people who are present here, giving joyfully and willingly to you. Yahweh, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, our ancestors, keep this desire forever in the thoughts of the hearts of your people, and confirm their hearts toward you. Give my son Solomon an undivided heart to keep and to carry out all your commands, your decrees, and your statutes, and to build the building for which I have made provision. Then David said to the whole assembly, Blessed be Yahweh your God. So the whole assembly praised Yahweh, God of their ancestors. They knelt low and paid homage to the Yahweh and the king. The following day, they offered sacrifices to Yahweh and burnt offerings to Yahweh, 1,000 bulls, 1,000 rams, 1,000 lambs, along with their drink offerings and the sacrifices in abundance for all Israel. They ate and drank with great joy in Yahweh's presence that day. Then for a second time, they made David's son Solomon king. They anointed him as Yahweh's ruler, and Zadok as the priest. Solomon sat on Yahweh's throne as king in place of his father David. He prospered, and all Israel obeyed him. All the leaders and the mighty men, and all of King David's sons as well, pledged their allegiance to King Solomon. Yahweh highly exalted Solomon in the sight of all Israel, and bestowed on him such royal majesty as has not been bestowed on any king over Israel before him. David, son of Jesse, was king over all Israel. The length of his reign over Israel was 40 years. He reigned in Hebron for 7 years, and in Jerusalem for 33. He died at a good old age, full of days, riches, and honor, and his son Solomon became king in his place. As for the events of King David's reign from the beginning to end, note that they are written in the events of the seer Samuel, the events of the prophet Nathan, and the events of the seer Gad, along with all his reign, his might, and the incidents that affected him, and Israel, and all the kingdoms of the surrounding lands. And that is 1 Chronicles chapter 29, and concludes our read through 1 Chronicles. So reviewing this text, we begin by looking at the fact that David was extremely generous in the contributions that he made to the building of the temple. Again, he wants for his son Solomon, the one whom God has chosen, to have every opportunity to be successful and to be able to complete this very important duty that has been laid before him, because he's not just building a house for a person. The text tells us he's not just building for a human, but he's building a house for Yahweh God. So David explicitly says, to the best of my ability, I've done what I could do for this house, for God and for Solomon. All the bronze and silver and gold that he had put together, the iron, all of the other materials. He even said that I gave of my personal treasures, gold and silver, in order for this house to be built. So David is very upfront with the effort that he has put into the provisions for the construction of Yahweh's house. No, he's not going to be able to build it himself, but he's definitely going to have a major influence on the building that it is going to become by the things that he has provided for its construction. But then he challenges the people. Anything about just from a leadership perspective, if you really want to challenge those who follow you, it's a lot easier to do that whenever you first have risen to the challenge. If a leader says, I really think that everyone within this group, just picking some out of thin air, should exercise more and run at least a mile a day, and yet he never does that, or she never does that, well, there's not a whole lot of there's not a lot of motivation that the people would probably take from that. Well, this guy's sitting here telling us we need exercise, we need running. We've never seen his tail ever get out of the chair. Seems a bit hypocritical, right? Well, for David here, he could implore others to consecrate themselves, to volunteer to consecrate themselves for this work, to dedicate themselves to this work, because he had shown a very strong dedication to the work already. So who else is ready to step up and do their part in the building of the temple? And we see the leaders leading the way. They donated so many tons of all these various materials. And specifically, you want to note that it says that the people rejoiced because they saw their leaders' willingness to give, for they had given to Yahweh wholeheartedly. So the king is pleased, the people are pleased, the leaders have done well. And this is all, again, this is a great moment in Israel's history where people put their money where their mouth is. And they speak about God and how much they want to reverence him and how much they want to support his name and glorify his name within the land. Well, here they are really letting the rubber meet the road and doing what they say they want to achieve, really helping it to take place. So this is a good moment. Well, then in the text following that, we're going to see a prayer that David offers up. And in this, he does not focus on himself. He does not laud the generosity of the people. He does not say, look how great we've done, and really put the I don't know, I guess give the credit to the people primarily. That's not what he does here. No, he still focuses greatly on Yahweh. He says, yours, Yahweh, is the greatness, power, glory, splendor, and majesty. Everything belongs to you. Yours is the kingdom, and you are exalted as head over all. Even riches and glory come from you. Power and might are in your hands. You're the one who makes others great, and you're the one who gives strength. We give you thanks and praise to your glorious name. So he really exalts the name and the character of Yahweh, and then turns around and shows great humility for himself and the people. Who are we? Who am I? And who are these people that we should be able to give so generously to you? Really, Yahweh, the only reason we're able to give so generously is because you have provided us the opportunity to give so generously. This is a great moment, I think, from David, where, again, he doesn't take credit, and he doesn't want to make him and the people look great. Again, the focus here is making Yahweh look great. And it's not even just making Yahweh look great. It's recognizing the greatness of who Yahweh is. Because we as people, we don't make Yahweh great. That's just who he is already. He is objectively great. And it is simply here, David taking an opportunity to recognize the greatness of God as is displayed through the generosity of the people. Because after all, who made them so prosperous? Of course, it was God. So here is David saying, you've blessed us to be able to give all of this to build your house. Really, all we're doing is giving to you what you have given to us. Again, David's generosity is mentioned. The people's generosity is mentioned. And then he as he continues to speak with Yahweh, he says, it is my desire for this attitude to continue. I want this to be the attitude of the people, not just here in this moment, but the attitude of the people moving forward. So Yahweh, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, our ancestors, keep this desire forever in the thoughts of the hearts of your people and confirm their hearts toward you. So let's keep the people moving in this direction. Let's keep the people with this proper attitude toward you. But also give my son Solomon an undivided heart. Oh, again, we know what's coming in the future, right? We know what's coming in the future. And this is hard to read, isn't it? This is hard to read because we know the very thing that ends up really plaguing Solomon is the fact that his heart is not given to Yahweh, but instead is given to his wives, many hundreds of wives and concubines. So again, from where we're at right here reading this, yes, this is a great prayer, and this is definitely something that David desired and that we hope would come to pass. Fortunately, we know that it just doesn't. Nevertheless, David then speaks to the whole assembly and says, we need to bless Yahweh, our God. So the Holy Assembly does that. They praised Yahweh, God of their ancestors. They knelt low. They paid homage to Yahweh. and also to the king, because the king is the representative of Yahweh. He is his king, just as we're going to read in a second, that the king sits on Yahweh's throne. And then after this, they have a big celebration and a big celebratory meal. The killing thousands upon thousands of livestock and offering drink offerings and so as well. The text says they ate and drank with great joy in Yahweh's presence that day. Again, this is a great celebration, definitely a high watermark, I think, in Israel's history. Everything that's taking place in this moment at the where the torch is being passed from David to Solomon. Certainly, this is a much better passing of the crown than what we saw previously from Saul to David. And then we have, for a second time here in chapter 29, the first time, I think, if I'm reading this correctly, back in chapter 23 and verse number 1, is the first time Solomon is appointed as king. I'll read that real fast. First Chronicles 23. Excuse me, First Chronicles 23, verse number 1, when David was old and full of days, he installed his son Solomon as king over Israel. So that's chapter 23 and verse 1. And then we read here, for a second time, they made David's son Solomon king. They anointed him as Yahweh's ruler and Zadok as the priest. And then again, Solomon sat on Yahweh's throne. He prospered, and all Israel obeyed him, and all the leaders and the mighty men and all of King David's sons as well pledged their allegiance to King Solomon. Text says that Yahweh highly exalted Solomon in the sight of all Israel, and bestowed on him such royal majesty as had not been bestowed on any king over Israel before him. To me, this is a funny thing for him to say, because there have only been two kings before Solomon up to this point in Israel's history. Yet that probably tells us just how incredible it was. Because, I mean, this is an easy statement. Oh, he was better than the previous two. But I think this statement to be made, I think probably shows us just how much grander it was for Solomon than both Saul and David before him. And then the text, as we have in First Chronicles, concludes with the passing of David. Again, talks about where he reigned. 40 years total, 7 in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. Died full of days, riches, honor, at a good old age. Talks about how the events of his reign from beginning to end, how they're written in the events. Now we have some other texts, it seems, some minutes of of Samuel and Nathan and God. All of these three men seem to have written various documents containing the exploits of David and other details about his life. And then we see, along with all of his reign, his might, and the incidents that affected him in Israel and all the surrounding kingdoms of the surrounding land. So again, we talked about how in this text, it doesn't focus a lot on the big mistakes that David made for the most part. The chief one in our mind being, Bathsheba. It's not mentioned here, but it is alluded to here in chapter 29 that, yeah, there were some things that happened, but that's not the focus of this text. But if you really want to read about those, you go read those in these other events, or you go read about those in the Samuels, or where they might have been alluded to in the Kings as well. So again, we're not whitewashing David. They're just focusing in this text on very specific things which help to progress the theological message that really is found here in First Chronicles and going into Second Chronicles. So if you have any questions or comments about this text here, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. If you've never read through First Chronicles before, well, now you can say you have. Checked that off your Bible reading list as well. And tomorrow we're going to keep reading through the text. We will be in First Chronicles chapters 1 and 2. We're going to read about Solomon's request for wisdom, and then his letters to Hiram and the reply. And it's kind of punny, but we're building toward the building of the temple here once we get into Second Chronicles. So hope you can join in for that read tomorrow. Again, we'll be reading in First Chronicles chapters 1 and 2. Again, if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to leave those in the comment section below, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Take care, and God bless.